In the half-light of Christmas Eve, Elias Crowe found the cabin door ajar. Warm coffee on the table. Steam still rising. But no footprints leaving. Only one coming in. A child's mitten on the floor. Wrong size. Wrong color. And a gravestone outside carved with today's date. You want the truth behind why Elias came back after last winter? Stay with me. Because this scene is lying to you already. Snow crusted hard around the cemetery gate. Iron hinges stiff, frostbitten. Boot steps slow. Careful. Elias Crowe stops at the first row. Nameplates leaning. Shadows pooling in carved letters. Cold breath drifting upward. He moves closer. A grave too new. Soil unsettled. Lines too clean. Then the headstone. His name. Elias Crowe. Date marked as today. 40 words behind us now. So listen close, viewer. You want the truth or justice? Stay with me. This ground hides both. Clarity hits first. Marble slick with rime. Sun slicing across it like a blade. Then the confusion. A whisper behind him. No voice. Just cold air curling around the ear. Elias kneels. Gloved hand brushing loose earth. Soil still warm beneath the top layer. Someone buried something in a hurry. Maybe someone meant to bury him. He studies footprints around the mound. Most wiped clean. One path print left near the corner. Heel dug deeper than the toe. Weight forced downward. Wrong angle for a grieving mourner. He mutters, "Show yourself." Only wind answers. Then, unsteady. Clarity again. A scrap of paper tucked under the stone edge. He slides it free. Child sketch. Charcoal lines rough. A stick figure beside a grave. Another figure behind it. Larger. Hat brim wide. Sheriff's hat. He whispers, "Who gave you this?" No one replies. Confusion presses in. Trees far off shifting, no air stands still. Shadows lengthening in directions light doesn't fall. A second scrap peeks from the soil. Torn edge. Same hand. Same child. This one shows two graves. One marked with a circle over the head shape. One marked with an X. His voice drops. "What did you see, kid?" Branches creak above him. He rises fast. Hand near his coat. No weapon drawn. Eyes scanning. Clarity slicing through the gloom. A single lantern glow inside the caretaker's shed. Study. To study. He moves toward it. Steps silent. Controlled. The door hangs open. Just an inch. Just enough. Inside. Tools hung in perfect rows. Lantern warm. Wick burning clean. But no caretaker. No boots on the floor. No coat on the peg. Elias breathes out. Slow. Frost curling from his lips. Someone was here seconds ago. Someone who expected him. Whisper again behind him. Same cold curl around the ear. Same intent. He doesn't turn. Just says, "If you're digging my grave, you better pray you finish the job." Silence folds in around him. Shadows wait. Truth waits deeper. Under the soil. Under the lies. And justice isn't far behind. 3 days before the wrong grave. Cold wind knifed down Main Street. Boards creaked. Windows shuttered one by one against the coming storm. Eli Cade watched from a saloon doorway. Badge gone. Hangover of a lawman still clinging behind his eyes. Whiskey glass sweating in his hand. Streets smelled of coal smoke, horse sweat, old blood and dust. Clarity. Hooves. A wagon lumbered in from the north trail. Black lacquer coffin riding crooked in the back. Canvas flap snapping like a loose tongue. Undertaker Finch walked beside it. Face gray as ash. Eyes refusing to look toward Boot Hill. Eli stepped off the boardwalk. Boots sank in half-melted ruts. Who died? Finch flinched. Swallowed. Man from the brand spread. Fell. Broke his neck. Flat voice. Too flat. Wind carried the smell of pine tar from the coffin. Fresh work. No rod yet. No time for rod. Name. Pause. Jonas Pike. Eli knew the name. Quiet cowhand. Never drank hard. Never rode wild. Neck breakers usually loud men. Bar brawlers. Card cheaters. Not Jonas Pike. Confusion. Dust twist dancing in the street. Snow grains riding inside it like lost heath. Storm building somewhere unseen. Brad himself stepped from the hardware store. Long coat. Perfect hat brim. Smile cut like it cost money. Eli Cade. Thought you were riding south. Thought so too. Brad's gaze flicked to the coffin. Came back slow. Simple thing. Ranch accident. Nothing for an ex-lawman to trouble lover. Not a question. Order wrapped in silk. Eli watched Finch's hands. Shaking. Undertaker clutched the reins too tight. Knuckles white as candle stubs. Wagon rolled toward the little chapel. Not toward Boot Hill. Wrong already. Brand spoke low. Men die every winter. Snow takes more than bandits. Eli stared at the trail ruts filling with slush. I'll sign whatever's needed, Brand added. Inquest. Witness statement. Makes things tidy. Tidy. Word smelled like lie. Scours everything. Leaves burns. Clarity. Inside the chapel. Lantern light hard on the pine boards. Coffin on sawhorses. Finch pried the lead. Hinges squealed like guilty voices. Body inside still warm around the wrists. Eli touched. Frowned. Neck not broken. Single dark bloom high in the chest. Close shot. Powder mark ringed the wound. Neck break. Eli's voice dry. Finch shook harder. Paper says neck. Brand's signature already on the corner. Ink barely dry. Confusion. Lantern hissed. Shadows leapt along the rafters like spooked crows. Snow started ticking against the chapel windows. Soft. Relentless. Eli leaned closer. Jonas's eyes half open. Something like surprise frozen there. Gun found. None, Finch whispered. Boss said accident. Said write it clean. Boss. Not God. Brant. Storm wind rose. Howled around the chapel like something hunting. Eli's thoughts scattered with it. Could write it clean. Could drink. Could forget the powder ring. First distortion. He heard his own voice say it. Ranch hand fell. Broke his neck in the ravine. Finch looked up. You'll swear that? Eli watched the snow packing against the glass. Tracks outside muffling fast. Evidence washing away before it ever spoke. I'll swear he's dead. Nothing more. Nothing less. Brand stepped into the doorway. Shadow cutting the lantern glow in half. All set, gentlemen. Not a question. Eli met that polished smile. Saw the calculation behind it. Saw a grave already dug in Brennan's mind. Maybe more than one. Wind moaned through the rafters. Eli's breath smoked in the cold air. Clarity. Dead man. Wrong story. Confusion. He turned from the body. Let Brand's signature stand like scripture. Walked out into the storm. Boots leaving shallow prints. Snow eager to erase every step. Winter came down mean the week Calebur crowed out. snow riding the wind sideways across Main Street. Boards squealing under hooves. Saloon lamps burning low, yellow, sick. He never meant it for a goodbye. Just meant distance, breathing room, one town between him and trouble. Trouble wore a preacher's smile at winter. And banker's gloves, soft kid leather, clean as untouched snow. Rourke watched those gloves counting tides one Sunday. Watched them measuring widows from the pulpit rail. Fingers snapping figures no one else could see. He'd felt something then. An itch at the base of the skull. Something wrong in Sild Creek. Fog of incense. Clear ring of the church bell. Clarity and confusion trading punches in his ears. After service. Alley behind the chapel. Breath steaming. Sky bright as polar steel. Reverend Cole stepped out first. Eyes red. Voice cracked, low. "You're leaving us, Rourke." "Not forever. Man shouldn't ride out under that much sky." "Why?" "Too much room for bullets to find him." Rourke smiled. Didn't feel like smiling. Preacher stared past him. Toward the belfry ladder. "They've been up there again." "Who?" "Kids. Maybe. Maybe not. Found something tied to the bell rope yesterday." "What thing?" "Little wooden cross. Names carved wrong." "Wrong how?" "Old names. Folks still breathing." Rourke felt the itch sharpen. "Graveyard wind. Alley shadows." "Show me." Preacher shook his head. "Already burned it. Man ought not keep omens." Rourke stepped closer. "You think it omen?" "I think somebody here likes rehearsals." Preacher's hands shook. Clarity in the tremor. Confusion in the silence that followed. Heard the banker laughing after service. Elias Finch. Laughter dry as leaves. Rourke watched him helping old Mrs. Dobbs into her buggy. Hat tipped, smile devotional. Hand lingering at her purse latch. "You trust him, Reverend?" Preacher didn't answer at first. Wind filled the gap, whispering through fence slats. "Man who holds the notes holds the town." "That's your answer?" "That the only answer men like him give." Rourke filed it away. "Not evidence. Just weather." "But weather changes things slowly." Later. Stable yard behind the hotel. Horses shifting. Chains clinking soft. Stable boy, Jussie, working a curry comb too fast. Eyes cutting sideways. "You're riding out, Mr. Rourke." "That's the rumor." "Don't." Kid voice thin as smoke. Rourke frowned. "Why not?" Jessie hesitated. Glanced toward the street. Toward the bank's tall windows. "Daddy says men vanish easier on the trail. Trail don't leave records." "Your daddy works for Finch." "Yeah." Jessie swallowed. "Said Mr. Finch called you a man who asks wrong questions." "What questions?" "One's about ledgers that don't balance. One's about widows missing coin." Stable lantern swung. Light sharp one moment. Lost the next. Clarity. Then confusion at the edges. Rourke remembered each swing. Remembered how the dark kept reaching. "Tell your daddy." "Tell him what?" "I rode out because winter's long. Not because I'm scared of him." Jessie nodded. Didn't believe it. Boots crunching frost as Rourke crossed the yard. Sky color of drowned iron. He passed the graveyard on his way out. Couldn't help looking. Rows of stone. Names in crooked lines. Wind singing through the iron gate. Something hanging there. Strip of cloth. Wide. Stiff with frost. His name inked on it. Caleb Burke. Tied carefully in a funeral knot. Clarity like a gunshot in his chest. Someone had practiced burying him. He untied the cloth. Folded it slow. Pocketed the warning. Trail ahead lost in low fog. Behind him. Church bell tolled once. Sound smeared thin by the wind. He rode anyway. Left town last winter under a sky that didn't blink. Thought distance could outrun handwriting. Thought warnings were just superstitions. Now a grave carried his name. And the practice was over. Snow kept falling while the town pretended nothing had shifted. Windows glowed warm. Streets stayed cold. Bennett felt the split. Inside and out. Truth and story. Boots scuffed frozen mud along Main Street. Church bell tolled half-hearted noon. Sound died quick in the gray. He watched curtains twitch. Faces vanish. Like they had drilled for this silence. He stopped outside the saloon. Hinges creaked in the bitter air. Piano inside. Off-key. Too spirited for a town with a fresh grave. He stepped through the swinging doors. Heat slapped his cheeks. Smoke softened every edge. Clarity outside. Confusion inside. Conversations died without being asked. Eyes slid away. Hat brims dipped. Glasses studied. He walked to the bar. Laid gloved hand on scarred wood. Looking for the barkeep. Man finally shuffled over. Red nose. Careful eyes. You pour for him last winter. The cowboy who never left. The barkeep wiped a perfectly clean spot. Never seen him. Bennett glanced down the room. Card game in the corner. Hands froze over chips. One man swallowed hard. Funny. Grave out there carries his name. Town swears he lived here. Nobody seems to remember his face. The barkeep shrugged. Winders blur. Names too. He poured whiskey that Bennett did not order. Pushed it forward like a peace treaty. Bennett left it standing. Who paid for the stone? The barkeep's jaw tightened. Church handled it. Generous collection. Heard that much. Collections usually start with one heavy pocket. His pocket. Silence. Card player in the corner scraped back his chair. Boots heavy. Spurs soft. Bennett turned slightly. Not enough to show nerves. Man wore a deputy star. Polished. Unused. You stirring up ghost cowboy. Voice flat. Too smooth. Bennett studied the star. That grave out there. Wrong man under it. Or wrong date on it. Either way. Ghost stirred before I arrived. Deputy smiled without warmth. Ground's frozen. Bodies there. Seems right enough. You a grave expert now. Only know when something itches. This town is all wool today. No skin. No feeling. Deputy stepped closer. Smell of tobacco and cheap soap. Folks here got Christmas to think about. Firewood. Stock. Families. They do not need strangers chasing shadows through their cemeteries. Bannard held the stare. Maybe their Christmas sits under someone else's name. Under frozen dirt. Without flowers. Without a word spoken right. He felt the room lean away from them. Chairs creaked. Cards gathered. Money pocketed. Conversation restarted too loud. Forced laughter. Noise trying to smother thought. Confusion rising like smoke again. He pushed away from the bar. Walked into the noise. Dropped a question in it. Who dug the grave? Voices tangled. Nobody sure. Everybody sure. He caught fragments. Old Jonas maybe. No. Jonas sick that week. Then maybe the church boys. Or drifters paid in stew. Story shifted with every mouth. Same grave. New hands. Each retelling. He stepped back outside. Cold cut through his coat. World sharpened. Snowflakes like needles. Street sounds clear. Hammer on distant anvil. Dog barking. Single wagon wheel squealing. Clarity. He crossed toward the church. White boards tired. Paint peeling like old lies. Wreath on the door. Red ribbon too bright for the day. He touched the latch. Paused. Felt eyes on his back. Watched windows along Main fall still again. Town holding its breath. afraid the truth might smell its way inside. He faced the street, called out without raising his voice. "You all sure about the man in that ground?" "Sure it is him." "Sure it is time." Wind answered first. Low. Icy. Someone shut a shutter. Another locked a door. One woman hurried a child inside. No one walked forward. Not even the deputy. Bennett let the silence sit. Heavy. Accusing. This is what a lie sounds like. Not words. Not stories. Just the space where truth does not show up. He turned back to the church. Pushed the door open. Smell of wax and old wood. Echo of hymns. Someone had scrubbed the floor recent. Covering tracks. But water leaves its own marks. Streaks along pew legs. Boot scuffs near the front. Bannard moved down the aisle. Counting. 3 sets of prints maybe. One lighter. Dragging dough. Looked like someone who did not want to walk forward. Confusion swirled at the altar. Candles burned low. Fresh. Beside the open Bible lay an empty envelope. No name. No writing. Just creased edges. He picked it up. Paper remembered the hand that crushed it. Felt anger there. Maybe fear. He folded it again. Slipped it inside his coat. Outside. Bell rope swayed slightly. No wind inside. Someone had pulled it not long ago, announcing something that should have been quiet. He stared up into the dim rafters. Voice low. Town rang its own warning. Then pretended not to hear it. Snow deepened overnight. Wind carved thin ridges across the street. Bennett followed them like threads in a bad story. Cold air sharp enough to peel thought clean. Perfect morning for truth. Worst morning for lies. Boots cracked ice with each step. Town still hiding behind curtains. He walked anyway. Toward the edge of Maine. Toward the place where the first distortions started bleeding into daylight. Stable yard silent. Horses restless behind wood planks. Steam rising from their nostrils like worried prayers. He scanned the ground. Clarity. One set of tracks leading behind the stable. Clean prints. Too clean. Edges sharp despite fresh snowfall. Someone heavy had walked here after dawn. He knelt. Pressed gloved fingers into the print. Depth wrong. Heavier than any man he knew. Even the blacksmith couldn't sink the deep. Boot heel crushed far down. Toe light. Someone leaned back while walking. Dragging weight. Pulling something. Or dragging someone. He rose. Followed the tracks around the corner. Toward the tree line. Toward the cold breath of the forest. Each step felt watched. Confusion lurking under the branches. Shadows moved like they listened. The prints stopped abruptly. Not turned. Not doubled back. Stopped. End of the trail. He studied the snow ahead. Undisturbed. No scuff. No depression. No body dumped. Just stopped. He whispered. Nobody vanishes on foot. Wind stirred. Brought scent of pine sap. Cold iron. Then something else. Burnt rope. He tracked the smell. 3 paces to the right. Frozen grass bent in a circle. Wait, Mark. Something heavy set down there. He crouched. Saw fibers. Then. Coarse. Rope strands snapped by force. Someone cut loose. Or broke free. Whispers brushed the back of his collar. He felt the air shift. Not wind. Presence. He stood slow. Called out. You watching me? Forest answered with creaks. Branches unloading their snow. No human voice. But the presence stayed. Waiting. He stepped backward into the open. Chest tight. Instinct gnawing like a trap dog. Something dragged from stable yard. Something set down. Something vanished. He faced the stable again. Time to stop staring at footprints. Time to look up. Hayloft door open an inch. Shadow behind it. Wavering. He walked in. Stable smell thick. Warm. Alive. Horses shifting uneasily. He spoke into the dark loft. Come down. Nothing. He climbed the ladder. Rung slick with frost. Each step creak. Each breath visible. Top of the loft dim. Light slipping through slats and thin blades. He scanned. Hay piled high. Blanket tossed aside. Then he saw it. Another boot print. Deep as the ones outside. Heel cratered. Till barely touching. Same backward lean. Someone strong. Someone burdened. He followed the prints across the loft. Toward the far corner. Toward a shape under a tarp. He eased the tarp back. Half-inch chain beneath. Snapped. Links twisted like soft wire. Not cut. Ripped. He touched a link. Cold. Smooth from a recent struggle. Who breaks Jane by hand? No answer. Shadow behind him deepened. He turned fast. Hand near his coat. Nothing there. Only hay. Only dust motes swirling like disturbed ghosts. But something had been there. He felt it in his ribs. Clarity blazed. Footprint pattern. Drag mark. Weight circle. Chain torn. Someone was bound. Held. Dragged out. Something went wrong. Then they disappeared. He descended the ladder. Stepped into sunlight again. Breath fogged the air. He knelt by the tracks once more. Pressed his palm beside the deep print. Compared. His weight left barely half the depth. Even a man twice his size couldn't make that. Not in this snow. He spoke aloud. Somebody wanted me to see this. Wanted me to follow it. Wanted the illusion of trail. But no ending. No direction. Just absence. Confusion slid into his spine again. Town behind him watching without eyes. Forest ahead listening without ears. He moved back toward Main Street. Crossed the open ground. Heard the anvil again. Metal ringing sharp. Clarity. He found the blacksmith at his forge. Big man. Arms thick as fence posts. Hammer frozen mid-swing when he saw Bennett. Bennett asked, "Your boots make prints like these?" Blacksmith frowned. "What prints?" "The deep ones. Behind your stable." Blacksmith shook his head. "I ain't walked back there since last week. Too much snow for me." Bennett stepped closer. Held out his palm. "Show me your heel." Blacksmith raised a brow. Lifted his boot anyway. Worn. Wide. But light. Wade wouldn't sink like the prints outside. Bennett studied his face. "Who's heavy enough to make dance like that?" Blacksmith answered slow. "Nobody around here. Except cattle. Or a man burdened with something he shouldn't carry." Blacksmith looked away. Toward Finch's bank. Toward Brand's ranch. Toward trouble. He murmured, "You stirring things that ought to stay buried." Bennett replied, "Buried things got a habit of crawling up on their own." He turned toward the cemetery hill. Toward the grave with yesterday's date. Toward the soil too warm. Toward the wrong name carved straight. Tracks didn't lie. Men did. And this anomaly, this impossibility, wasn't an accident. It was a message. And messages stand to have authors. He whispered into the cold. Time to find the one holding the pen. Snow lay crusted along the schoolyard fence. Boards creaked under Eli's boots as he approached. Wind carried chalk dust and faint children's voices, echoes only. Bell rope swung on its own, slow arcs, no sound. He paused there, felt watched from the empty windows. Inside, chalkboard still filled with yesterday's arithmetic, names smudged underneath. One name circled hard enough to tear Slade paint. Jonas Pike, the man lying in the wrong grave. Yet Jonas never had children, never came near this school. Eli stepped closer, ran gloved finger over the circle. Dust streaked black. Beneath it, thin line of fresh chalk. Someone had circled it again. After school let out. He listened. Floor breathing. Roof ticking. Breath sounding too loud. A soft scrape behind the teacher's desk. Then stillness. He moved slow, hand near the worn revolver grip. Little girl crouched there, dress wrinkled, one boot unlaced. Eyes white as winter moons, pencil clutched in a trembling fist. He eased back his hand, let coat fall over holster. "You Maddie Dawson?" She nodded once. Quick, ready to bolt. "Your mono, you're here." Another nod, not convincing. "What's you drawing there?" She pressed the kecker against her chest, shook her head. Eli watched her knuckles whiten around the page edge. Desk smelled of ink, cedar shavings, cold iron and stove ash. Outside, wind whispered along the eaves, said keep moving. He crouched, joints popping like distant shots. "I am not here to scare you." Silence, just the bell rope brushing the wall. "You drew Jonas Pike's name, over and over. Why?" Her mouth opened. No sound came. Paper crinkled as she held it tighter. He waited, let silence work like another question. Finally she pushed the paper toward him, arm stiff. He took it, careful, as if it might bleed. Crude lines, but clear enough. A hill, a grave. Cross leaning wrong, earth piled too neat, too square. 4 figures around the hole, faces left blank. One hat with a star, sheriff shape, no face. A second with a book, long coat, pastor maybe. Third wore a long duster, could have been anybody. Fourth was small, shoulders hunched against a blowing wind. Above them, child's letters, dead man wrong. Eli studied the drawing until inkiness crowded his vision. "You saw this?" She nodded, jaw clenched so tight it shook. "Where were you?" She pointed toward the corner window, then the floorboards. "Stayed after lessons. Teacher went to the store." Her words came thin, almost swallowed by the room. He followed her finger. Window looked over the churchyard hill. But from here, official grave site lay out of sight. Trees in the way, slope wrong. "You sure it was Jonas?" "Did not know his name. Just the boots." She tapped another small detail. Boots at grave's edge. Too big, too heavy. Soles cross-hatched in tiny squares. Eli felt the back of his neck prickle. He had seen those tracks near the grave this morning. Boot prints too deep for a dead man. Tracks sheriff claimed belonged to Undertaker's helper. Yet Undertaker limped, dragged one foot, made uneven marks. These prints in the drawing were straight, balanced. Sure. Who wore those boots, Maddie? She swallowed, eyes tracking to the bell rope. Man from the bank. Words barely there, still hit like a hammer. Official story blamed Jonas. Drunk quarrel, fall, broken neck. Banker signed the report as witness. Helpful citizen. Eli looked back at the board. Jonas's name circled again. Is there more? She hesitated, reached into the desk drawer, pulled out another paper, edges torn, stained. Not her drawing. Adult handwriting, lines pressed deep. He recognized that cramped script. Jonas Pike's hand. Letter to nobody, maybe everybody, maybe to the ground. Saw him writing at once. Saloon corner, unsteady lamp. Maddie whispered. Teacher found this near the creek. Town said it was nothing. They always say that, when truth cuts too close. Eli read the first line, lips moving. If I die tonight, it will not be by my hand. Clarity slammed in. Lamp light. Frozen creek. Broken fence. Then confusion rushed back. shadows lengthening behind every remembered face. "Where's your teacher now, Maddie?" She stared at the empty doorway. Didn't answer. He folded the letter, slipped it inside his coat. "You told anyone about what you saw?" She shook her head, hard, ponytail whipping like a lash. "They said the town needed quiet." "Who said?" "Man with the star. Man with the book. Sheriff and pastor. Closing ranks around a wrong grave." Dismodes drifted between them. Tiny ghosts in pale light. "You did right keeping this safe." Her eyes begged for something past rightness. "Will there be trouble?" "Yes." "Will there be justice?" He thought of the wrong grave, the right boots. Of Jonas Pike's words digging through his pocket lining. "There will be an attempt." Outside, church bell rang once, then stopped mid-swing. Sound cut off like a throat. Eli rose, knees aching, hat brim low against the light. "Stay near people tonight, Maddie. Keep windows latched." She nodded, small shoulders folding inward. As he stepped outside, daylight knifed across the yard. Every nail head on the fence shone like a watching eye. Wind shifted, brought chimney smoke, hint of river rot. He looked toward the graveyard hill, then past it. Somewhere beyond that hill lay the truth, buried badly. And now the town had a witness, drawn in pencil lines, night pressed down like a wet tarp. Lamplight bled across the snow in thin streaks. Eli moved through the alley behind Finch's bank. Boots soundless, breath shallow. Contradictions lived here, in ledgers, in whispers, in men. He stopped at the back door. Lock scraped with recent use, metal still warm. Finch closed early tonight, too early. Snow around the threshold sloped wrong. Sweep marks pushing outward, not inward. Someone left in a hurry. He leaned close, listened. Heard a pen scratching, slow, careful. He pushed the door, just enough. Hinge groaned, sound too loud. Inside, ledger lamps pooled gold on their desk. Finch hunched over their book, writing neat rows of numbers, repeating entries, erasing others. Eli stepped inside. Finch didn't turn. Voice calm, like he'd rehearsed this moment. "You should be at the saloon." Eli answered. "Should be a lot of places." Finch dipped his pen again. Ink black, glossy. Too glossy. New bottle, open tonight. He closed the ledger with a snap. "If you're here about Jonas Pike." It was an accident. Always the same line. Eli moved closer, studied the ledger's spine. Crack in the leather. Fresh. Book replaced recently. Pages too wide for a long-used ledger. Whose handwriting is that? Finch tensed. Mine. Who else? Eli slid the ledger open. Ran a finger down the column. Stopped at Jonas Pike's line. Letter shapes careful. Measured. Not Jonas's script. Not Finch's either. Someone forged both. You sure that's your hand? Finch's jaw twitched. Ink still wet. Fresh entry. Jonas Pike. Funds withdrawn. Signed by Sheriff Braddock. Eli stared at it. Part. Sheriff Braddock had been dead 6 months. Buried west of the Willow Line. By Finch himself. Eli pushed the ledger toward him. You signed the dead now. Finch swallowed. Paperwork backlog. Sloppy record keeping. Eli pointed at the signature. That is his hand. Not yours. Finch's fingers trembled around the pen. Town needs neat books. Truth doesn't matter. Eli leaned in. Truth matters to the ground. And Jonas Pike is in it. Finch flinched. Eyes darting toward the safe. Toward the window. Toward escape. Eli stepped closer. Tell me about the withdrawal. Finch whispered. Sheriff ordered it before he passed. Another lie. Dead men don't order withdrawals. Dead sheriffs don't sign statements. Contradiction carved sharp as a boot heel in wet dirt. Elias steadied Finch. Sweat glimmered along his temple. Cold room. Warm fear. Paper lied. Handwriting lied. But men cracked. Who forced you to write this? Finch shook his head. Nobody forces me. Eli tapped the forged line. Then you forged the sheriff's name. Small panic flashed behind his eyes. Finch whispered again. Town needs quiet. Need clean books. The banker's voice broke. We owe him. Him. There it was. Not Jonas. Not Finch. Someone behind the ink. Someone pulling strings. Two. Finch closed his eyes. Pastor Cole. Elias straightened. Thought of the pastor's trembling hands. Thought of the little wooden cross tied to the bell rope. Thought of the grave practiced not with his name. Why the pastor? Finch's voice cracked. He said Jonas knew too much. Said the top ledger would damn him. Said the sheriff would cover it. Sheriff dead. But his name lived on paper. Used like a puppet. Eli felt the contradiction burn cold. Pastor. Preacher. Guide of souls. Now guiding books. Guiding graves. Where is he now? Finch pointed toward the back window. Chapel. Left with a ledger under his arm. Said he had one last entry to correct. Eli stepped back. Snow crunched beneath his heel. Cold clarity filled him. Jonas Pike didn't fall. Jonas Pike didn't break his neck. Jonas Pike threatened someone with the truth. Confusion tried to creep in. Tried to fog the edges. But he resisted. Head clear. Boots firm. As he stepped into the alley, wind roared over the rooftops. Bell clanged once in the distance. Broken. Off rhythm. He knew the sound. Knew the hands that pulled the rope. Small hands. Child hands. Maddie's warning played in his head. Man with a star. Man with a book. Ledger. Cross. Wrong grave. All tethered to the same rope. He looked toward the chapel hill. Shadow moved across the steeple. Dull. Slow. Carrying something heavy. Ledger ridges glinted under the moon. Eli whispered. Pastor wrote the lie. Banker buried it. Sheriff signed it. And Jonas paid for it. Contradiction solved. Truth waking. Time to drag it into daylight. Snow fell in slow spirals over Wood Hill. Wind carried the sound of it. Dry. Hissing. Like sand over bone. Eli climbed the slope with each step cracking the crusted top layer. Grave markers leaned at tired angles. Names half buried in frost. Sky bruised purple over the ridge. He reached Jonas Pike's grave. Stopped. Soil sunken an inch. Not yesterday. Not natural. Someone opened it. Recently. He crouched. Gloved fingers brushed loose earth. Warm again. Wrong again. He muttered. Graves shouldn't breathe. Wind answered with a low moan. He scanned the hill. Saw nothing. Felt something. Breath on his neck that wasn't wind. He stood slowly. Boot prints circled the grave. Deep ones. Same heavy heel as the anomaly behind the stable. He followed them with his eyes. Around the mound. Back toward the tree line. Then gone. Prints vanished as if the man lifted from the ground. He whispered. Not possible. Yet tracks told their own truth. Contradicted every lie the town sold. He knelt again. Slit fingers beneath the loosened soil. Touched cloth. Not burial cloth. Canvas. Rough. He pulled. A roll of something emerged. Wrapped tight. Tied with butcher's twine. He untied it. Boots spilled out. Jonas Pike's boots. The same Maddie Dawson drew in her sketch. Too big for any child to confuse. Soles cross-hatched. Edges worn from ranch work. He whispered, Jonas wasn't in that grave. Ground never held him. Ground held something else. He reached back into the pit. Fingers found cold metal. He pulled it free. Revolver. Loaded. Oiled. Never fired. Cylinder clean. Sheriff's report claimed Jonas shot himself during a scuffle. Bullet wound center chest. Gunpowder on the hands. But this gun told a different story. This gun told none. He aimed it at the snow. Triggered the cylinder. Smooth spin. Perfect care. Someone staged a death. Someone planted a light. Then buried the truth shallow. He said into the cold. Why hide boots if body are already gone? Wind didn't answer. But something cracked in the trees below. Hard. Deliberate. Not branch weight. Footstep. Heavy. He dropped into a crouch. Waited. Breath small. Pulse steady. Shadow broke free from the tree line. Long coat. Wide brim. Face hidden. Not Finch. Not the sheriff. Something broader. Shoulders too large for either man. Shadow paused. Head tilted. As if smelling the open grave. As if searching for the missing boots. Eli kept silent. Boot prints around the grave lined up with that silhouette. He rose slowly. Called out. I know Jonas ain't down there. Shadow froze. Didn't run. Didn't answer. Just breathed loud enough for Eli to hear it across the snow. Cold air pumping from lungs too strong. Eli raised the revolver. Though empty of truth. Still metal. Still weight. Show me your face. Shadow turned. Not toward Eli. Toward the open grave. Head bowed. Like mourning. Or marking territory. Then it stepped back into the trees. Gone before the wind could gather its coat. Eli exhaled. Fog drifted from his lips like spirit smoke. He climbed into the grave pit. Shallow. Too shallow for a man. Soil mixed with sawdust. To mimic weight. To fool grieving eyes. To trick a town that wanted quiet. He dug with bare hands. Cold biting through leather. Found wood slats. Box fragments. Not coffin grade. Cheap crate wood. Thrown together. Scribed with faint chalk marks. Lines. Measurements. Ledger-style notations. Pastor's handwriting maybe. He lifted a broken piece. Turned it in the dimming light. A number. 2 initials. Then a word. Next. Eli stared at it until meaning settled like snow. Not Jonas. Not just Jonas. List. Sequence. Burials planned before the dead were chosen. He dropped the wood. Stood. Cold wind scraped his face raw. He called into the dark. Pastor Cole. Your hands all over this. Silence. Then another crack from the ridge. Softer. Sneak step. Eli turned. Saw a figure crouch near the chapel fence. Small. Thin. Barely more than a shadow. Maddie Dawson. Coat too big. Face pale. She pointed at the grave. Voice faint. They dug one for you too. Eli swallowed. Which? She pointed again. Second ridge. Near the old willow. Fresh mound. No name carved yet. Just waiting. Cold slid down in spine like a blade. He stepped out of Jonas's grave. Walked toward the willow line. Snow deep. Air heavy. Grave mound small. Too small for a coffin. He knelt. Scraped frost from the top. Found an envelope pinned under a stone. One word scrawled in pastor's put hand. Soon. Eli closed his eyes. List had moved forward. Jonas Pike on. Eli Cade next. He looked back toward the first grave. Boots out. Gone clean. Truth rising. A storm building around him. He whispered to the cold earth. Time to open every grave in this town. Snow kept falling after midnight. Soft. Relentless. Jed Carter watched it bury Main Street tracks. Watched the town erase itself. Lamp glow wavered in the church windows. Hymn notes leaked into the cold street. Too sweet for what waited inside. He touched the folded papers in his coat. Boot print sketches. The boy's drawing. The forged suicide note. 3 nails for 1 coffin. His breath steamed in short, angry bursts. Tonight the shatter lost its cover. Or he went into that wrong grave himself. He stepped into the vestibule. Warm air. Lantern smoke. Cheap perfume and woolen sweat. Voices dropped when he entered. Him stumbled. Recovered. I slid away. Everybody knew the story. Cowboy who'd left town last winter. Accused of murder. Never tried. Never cleared. Just gone. Until the gravedigger hammered his name on fresh pine. Jed walked the center aisle slow. Spur sticking like a metronome. Straight toward the pulpit. Toward Mayor Ezra Pike. Pike's hand hovered above the Bible. Never quite touching it. Fine black coat. Silver watch chain. Boots too worn for a rich man. Jed noted the cracked leather. The thinning heel. Same pattern as the deep print by the grave. He stopped 2 steps from the altar. Congregation whispers crawled like mice. Keep singing. His voice came out flat. Dead iron. Pike forced a smile. Jed Carter returns to worship. Jed's gaze stayed cold. Return to business, Mir. He pulled a damp sketch from his coat. Held it up to the lantern light. Child scroll of the graveyard. Little crosses. Big tree. 1 dark figure with a shovel. And a second with a lantern and tall hat. Jed turned slightly. Eyes found the front pew. Where the girl sat. Braids tied with red ribbon. Boots swinging above the floorboard. She wouldn't look at him. Bike shifted behind the pulpit. Town doesn't need theatrics, Carter. Jed's voice stayed quiet. This girl watched the grave dug. 3 nights early. Murmurs rose. Fell again. Child imagines things. Pike's hand finally touched the Bible. Knuckles white. Storm plays tricks. Gravedigger works when he can. Jed unfolded the second paper. Smooth. Squared. The suicide note that had cleared Pike's cousin. Pinned the Winder killing on Jed instead. Read this to them again. He laid the paper on the open Bible. Pike frowned. Everyone already knows what it says. Not what it says. Jed tapped the lines. How it's written. He raised his head. Met the sheriff's stare by the side door. Sheriff Larkin. You've seen Henry Pike's hand. The sheriff hesitated. Jaw workin'. Lot of bills. Lot of signatures. Jed held up the note beside a crumpled receipt. 2 sets of letters. Similar shape. Different pressure. Receipts Henry's. He lifted the note. Letters yours, Ezra. The room sucked in breath together. Him died mid-verse. Wind moaned along stained glass. Ezra Pike's eyes went flat. Like shutters slammed. You calling your mayor a forger? Jed took 1 step closer. Close enough to smell bay rum, whiskey under mint. Calling you the man who planted that body. A woman sobbed near the back. Jed didn't turn. Couldn't afford mercy yet. The wrong grave. He let the words hang. Grave with my name. Today's date. He felt the town watching. Old guilt swirling with fresh fear. The body wasn't me. He tapped his own chest. Was the drifter vanished from the freight car? Pike's jaw bulged. Railroad men identified him. Railroad men saw a burned face. Not a soul. Jed flicked the last paper open. Charred edge. Smeared ink. Passenger list stub. 1 man missing. had claim papers on Pike's north pasture. Now the silence grew heavy, thick as the coal smoke. Jed lowered his voice. Storm washed his tracks. Not your boots, though. He looked to the back, to the gravedigger hunched at the door. Tell them whose lantern you followed, Marcus. Marcus trembled, hat crushed in rough hands. Eyes avoided Pike. Mayor said it was charity. Burying a stranger. Jed waited. Mayor say whose name to carve. Marcus swallowed. Yours. Jed Carter. Said town's safer that way. Sound crashed through the church. Voices. Prayers. Curses. Jed kept still. Let the fury blow past. Then pointed at Pike's boots. Too worn for a man with that watch. He nodded at the gold chain. Too deep for the snow that night. A rider's print. Not a driver's. He heard the sheriff's slow step behind him. The click of a hammer drawn back. Not pointed Jed's way. Ezra. You got an explanation? Pike's hand left the Bible. Drifted toward his coat. Jed watched. Time stretching thin. Careful. He didn't raise his voice. Reach wrong, you answer here. Not in court. Pike's eyes darted. Doors. Windows. Faces turned against him. Storm howled outside. Inside, one man's world shrank to the space between hands. He lunged anyway. Metal flashed under the coat. Jed moved on reflex. Past failure burning in his veins. The shot cracked like frozen timber. Echoed off rafters. Lantern glass shivered. Smoke coiled toward the ceiling. Pike staggered. Gun slipped from his fingers. Clattered across the pulpit. Sheriff's bullet had found the rich man's shoulder. Dropped him to one knee. Jed stepped beside him. Looked down into the mayor's ruined certainty. Storm's done washing tracks tonight. He nodded toward the windows. Nothing left to cover you. Pike's breath came ragged. You think this town wants truth? Jed glanced at the girl with red ribbons. At Marcus. At the faces once eager to forget. They don't have to want it. He turned away from Pike. Just have to live with it now. Snow crusted hard over the cemetery hill. Wind razored across stones. Morning light. Then. Pitiless. Frozen dirt ringed the open grave like broken teeth. Calder Ross stood above it. Hat pulled low. Jaw locked. Sheriff Pike knelt nearby. Wrists bound with his own belt. Town watching. Faces pinched raw by cold and shame. Truth waited in that hole. Not mercy. Truth. You wanted justice in this frozen dirt. You stayed through 9 parts for it. You'll get it now. Halder dropped to one knee. Studied the body again. Not the ranch hand the headstone named. Not Joanna Price. Poor drunk. Frequent jail straw. Rich cloth on the corpse. Fine wool. Eastern cut. Boots near new. Soles barely scarred. Calder spoke low. Let wind carry the words. Heard your story again, Sheriff. Man falls drunk. Freezes behind the livery. Buried fast before ground turned iron. Town calls it sad. Not suspicious. Calder touched the stiff coat sleeve. This ain't a drunk. He pointed to the boot heel. Deep gouge at the edge. Heavy spur worn that. Long in the saddle. Money too. You ever see Jonah Price own a horse? Silence. Breath smoking. Eyes sliding toward Pike. Pike spat blood in the snow. You're spinning ghosts, Ross. Body's a body. Ground don't argue. Calder's gaze stayed on the corpse. Ground argued from the start, Sheriff. Boot prints too deep for one man dragging dead weight. Your prints beside them. Heel worn like your Sunday pair. You carried him careful. Didn't want the head to knock. You respected the merchandise. Wind rose. Whistle through iron fence. Clarity now. Every nail. Every grain of wood. Confusion rode its edges. Shadows licking under the coffin boards. Calder gestured toward the grave dirt pile. Bullet in his back. No powder. Burns on the coat. Shot from distance. Someone scared of his face. Gun in Jonah's hand, never fired. Barrel clean as communion silver. He straightened. Looked at the banker near the fence. Ledger show a transfer day before the storm. Big ranch. Title move quick. Witnessed by Pike. Banker swallowed. Nodded once. Signature didn't match the old man's hand. Calder stepped closer to Pike. Boots crunching over ice. Tell them whose body this is. Pike stared at the hole. Jaw working. No need. Calder's voice stayed flat. Hard. Town already knows. Just too scared to say it. Horace Lyle. Cattle king. Thought he owned Winter too. Gasps steamed the air. Someone crossed themselves. Calder continued. You rode alone that night, Sheriff. Horse slathered when you hit the livery. Stable boy remembers. Didn't fit your short patrol. Old man met you on the ridge for papers. You met him with a rifle instead. Pike's shoulders sagged. Weight finally landing. He was selling everything east. Would have left this town dust and dead. I kept the range here. Kept folks working. Calder's eyes didn't soften. You kept his land. His house. His best horses. Signed his name with your slow schoolhouse hand. You buried him under another man's stone. Paid for a crooked sermon. The preacher flinched. Eyes wet. I feared him, the man whispered. Feared you. Wind shifted. Brought the smell of turned earth. Old pine. Calder tasted rust and cold iron on his tongue. You all feared him. Feared truth more. He looked over the gathered faces. You live with a lie long enough. Feels like weather. Just something that happens over your head. But this lie had a trigger. Had fingerprints in frozen mud. They don't melt. Not really. Pike struggled to his feet. Think hanging me fixes it. Snow still comes. Cattle still starve. You walk away clean, Ross. Calder stepped close. Their breath mingled white between them. I don't walk clean. Carry every grave I open. Carry this one too. He turned to the man near the fence. Jury's been sitting quiet all winter. Time to speak. Ropes creaked as someone tested the limb. Boots shifted through ice. No one looked away now. Clarity burned the last fog from their eyes. Pike laughed once. Short. Broken. You'll kill your own sheriff on Christmas Eve. Calder looked at the sky. Pale. Wide. Justice don't read calendars. Only earth. Blood. Names on stone. He watched as they led Pike toward the big cottonwood. Didn't hurry it. Didn't slow it. Frozen dirt waited under every step. When it was done, wind carried the town's long exhale. No cheer. No comfort. Just a hollow place where fear had lived. Calder walked back to the open grave. Studied Horace Lyle one last time. I promised you the truth out here. Didn't promise it would feel good. He signaled for the ropes. Men lowered the body with rough, steady hands. Frozen claws thudded after. Dull drum over a stolen life. Calder set the new marker himself. Horace Lyle. Died wrong. Set right. Snow began again. Soft flakes on raw earth. Justice never warm. Only honest. He turned from the hill. Boot prints straight as a ledger line toward town. No more wrong graves behind him. Just the frozen dirt. Holding what it knew. And keeping the rest quiet. If this story stirred a memory or two, saddle up with us again. Hit subscribe and help keep these old frontier tales alive. Out here, every name, every trail, every sunset still matters. So till we meet again, friend, keep your hat tipped to the past and your heart pointed west.